On February 28th, these two teams saw each other down in Atlanta, and it was a late-minute heroic for the Wizards to walk away with the win off a Trae Young miss. Tonight, the opposite was true. Trae Young and the Hawks came into town, 28 for Trae, 17 for DeJounte Murray, but a season-high 43 points for Kristaps Porzingis, albeit in a loss. Final score 122-120. The Wizards take a loss to the Atlanta Hawks. They will be seeing them again on Friday. So this is going to be a rather different post-game live here on NBC Sports Washington. Chris, Drew, and Megan will be joining us in a moment, but Christy Winters-Scott, a lot to talk about. I already gave you KP's scoring. Tonight, Brad had 24. Kuz had 25. These three did their job tonight, albeit in a loss.
Absolutely, but you have to take care of the basketball. And that's the number one thing tonight that I saw. 19 turnovers. Atlanta scored 20 points off of those. And when you have 34 assists on 47 made shots, you're maximizing all of the offensive possessions when you take care of the ball. So all of those empty possessions, they added up in this close game. So on Friday, they cannot do that, obviously. But it was unforced errors. I thought there were miscues on the offensive side in the quarter court. But then their transition game, I thought they weren't in sync in terms of where the ball needed to go, like get it to the corner and then fill the paint. I just think there were some unforced turnovers that did them in tonight.
Christy, I know I've said this last season. It was kind of, the Chris Miller rule, which was first to 120, and then they made some rules that allowed people to play defense. And so the scores came back down. But there was a rule that I always talked about, which was if you score 30 over 3 quarters, you should win the game. Who do you think did that tonight? Atlanta. They scored 30 in 3 different quarters. The Wizards had a 33-point second quarter, and they came out in the third quarter and gave you 33. But it was those first and fourth quarters where they dipped under 30. And Atlanta, they've got shooters over there. Kevin Huerter's a shooter. Trae Young's a shooter. You can't leave those guys open. You
can't. And Trae Young was setting the table up so perfectly. I don't know how many lobs they had, but a lot of them were from Trae Young. Ice Trae came in and did what he was supposed to do. So I think they're 8 days into Quinn Snyder being their head coach. They're still trying to find their identity with his philosophy. So they're still trying to iron some things out. But I think, if Washington would have taken better care of the ball and maximized their possessions, I think they would have been on the better side of this game. But Atlanta was clicking on all cylinders, and they were getting the job done defensively and disrupting Washington in terms of getting them to turn the ball over and score those 20 points off of those 19.
It's interesting because, again, we're going to see the same team in a couple of days, and I look at today's box score, and, of course, just my eyeballs telling me, when you see Porzingis go for 43 points, 5 boards, 5 assists.
Big.
Now, mind you, he's a unicorn, but he was 6 for 9 from deep tonight.
Insane.
Excuse me, 7 for 10 from deep tonight.
Let
me make sure I give this man all his flowers tonight.
7 of them.
What do you make of his performance tonight, knowing that he had Brad and Kuz on the court with him?
Well, I thought he was phenomenal. I thought he was hunting his shot, and when I say that, he wasn't like, give me the ball every single time down, but I thought he spaced the floor really well. I thought he found the spots on the court where he knew the team needed him. He was in the corner when they needed him to space the court out in transition. He was able to put the ball on the floor and use his 7-3 frame to shoot over top of people. What I like most is for all players to get downhill and attack. But when you're 7 of 10 from 3, by all means, lift and flick it from 3 and knock it in. 17 of 22 from the floor. He probably should have taken 30 shots if he's making them at that clip.
70%, I'll let you do it.
Keep shooting.
Like, for me, the thing was, now, he wasn't the only one. He gave you, like you said, 70% from 3, but Kyle Kuzma also gave you a 25-10 double-double. Let's bring in Chris and Drew and get their thoughts on it tonight. Again, my friends who gave it to me in the crossover, so now they join us on postgame. Again, guys, great call tonight, but last night, what did we say? We said a win is a win. Drew, the opposite side of that same core, a loss is a loss.
When in my experience, when there's must-win games or must-win situations, there's no set rotation. If it's a playoff game or if it's a championship game, there's no set rotation. Your playing time is dictated through flow. Coaches put guys in because of the flow of the game, and what's at stake. How much we've been talking how important this game was. That fourth quarter, I really meant it with my chest. I've been seeing this over and over again. The starters kind of getting in too late to close out games. The Wizards, you got the stat. Can you read that stat?
This is the 7th time that they've had a 15-point lead or more and lost it.
Did you hear that? The
7th time they've had a 15-point lead or more and they've lost.
And this is the most in the NBA?
Yep.
Okay, so when does it become insanity where you keep doing the same? It ain't about guys' feelings. It's about winning the game, and I thought the beginning of the fourth quarter, and I said it twice, this is a great moment. I might get this group one more possession on both ends, and then I got to come in with my big three and some heat. That didn't happen, but what happened was a 14-0 run.
I think Christy said it, and I think it's really the only point that I'm going to make. I want to be brief, guys. You can't turn the ball over 20 times, and 2 of your best players accounted for 10 of them. We could talk about how much scoring Porzingis, Beal, and Kuzma did tonight, but they also gave the opposition a lot more opportunities. Can't turn it over 20 times. That has been the recipe all season long for this team when they've struggled to lose games. And Drew just talked about it, really the importance of tonight's ball game. Yes, you're going to see them again Friday. You'll see them one more time down in Atlanta in April. But this is go time now. This time of the year is about doing some things that might not be conventional to do whatever it takes to win ball games.
All right, guys, so let's go ahead and look down the road, and I mean, albeit a couple of hours from now, 36 hours. How do we solve this ball control turnover issue? Drew first, then Christy. Let's get this thing solved right now. Drew, what do you say?
Listen, they got enough to win. I think they need to really dissect set rotations in the flow of the game and take it from there. You did enough tonight. Even with the turnovers, you had a 15-point lead. I mean, look how many guys. These guys combined for a season high 92 points. You got 100 points from 3 guys. What more do you need? I think right now with the Wizards, it's between the ears. It's nothing physical. I think it's what they want to do with their heart and their brain mentally. If they really want it, give themselves a chance, but it's going to start between the ears.
It's urgency for me. I mean, you have to have a sense of urgency on every single possession and win that moment and then stack those moments, right? And I think, Drew, what you said, I was over here, if I had a church fan, I would have been fanning it. I was over here snapping. It is a flow, and it is attitudinal. It is about your approach. It is about your focus and your intention. And I think at stretches tonight, Washington just lost their focus and had those miscues and those turnovers, but then don't repeat it, right? You're talking about those games where it was 15-point leads and we've not won in those games. I think it's also on these possessions, it's like, okay, we just turned it over, but now let's not do the same thing again, right? Within the microcosm of what this game presented for Washington, which was a great opportunity here at home to get a win, to gain some traction for this playoff push. So I think when you're talking about attitude, I think everyone wants to win, okay? But everyone's not already doing what they need to do to win on possession by possession moments in this game. And I think that's when you lose that traction.
No, indeed. Chris and Drew, since we're going to see this same team in a couple of days, I'm going to let you guys go early. Take a break, take a relaxer. We'll see you Friday against the Atlanta Hawks back here in Cap One Arena. Christy, you and I, we get to continue this conversation because I'm about solutions, right?
Same.
Like we said, win is win, loss is loss.
Same.
But this is one of those games, as Drew said it, we have really emphasized the importance of this particular matchup. We knew that the last one came down to the wire last time we saw Atlanta, so we knew that they were going to come in here with a little bit of extra sauce on it.
Absolutely.
Tonight, we're not having a good shooting game from beyond the arc, except for the unicorn.
Right.
So now my thing is this. How do we get everybody involved? Because if you look at the box score on the bench, Wizards only scored 17 off the bench.
Right.
The rotation wasn't even that deep. There's a lot of guys. Kendrick Nunn's a DMP, Anthony Gill, DMP, Johnny Davis good at DMP. We've got to get the most out of what we have. My question is, as a coach, as a former player, how do you maximize what seems to be in-season playoff climate minutes and moments on the court?
Well, it's not the playoffs yet, but boy, you're building towards that, right? So your mentality also has to be on par with what is at stake. So I think as a former player, as a coach, I think for me, it's all about your attitude. It's all about your want to. A lot of people do things because they have to do things, like I have to do this. But when you want to do it, it's done in a different way. When, in terms of your mentality, in terms of your fire and your fight, you have to dig it out of the mud sometimes. It's not going to be handed to you, and this is not an indictment. And I'm sure they're in the NBA for a reason. They're pros. They get it. They understand that.
Best of the best.
But it has to be sustained. Like we saw flashes of it, but it must be sustained. If that's who you are, then be that all the time. Don't show it sometimes throughout a game and then not at other points in the game, especially down the stretch. Those turnovers were so costly down the stretch, Wes.
No, it's a lot.
It was crippling. And so when you have those moments that you can pull yourself up by the bootstraps and go ahead and dig in and say, listen, we're not going to do that again. We have been crippled by these turnovers all evening long. So make sure we're maximizing our great spacing. Make sure we're coming to meet passes. Make sure before you let the pass out of your hands that it's a viable situation for your teammate who's supposed to catch it and to be able to do something with it. Don't throw it because, I have to get it out of my hands, or I'm not going to shoot it right now because I'm not in a flow. Listen, there's a way to do things and there's a way not to.
I think you're speaking about intentionality. Whatever you do, be intentional with it, and the outcome therefore comes with it. So, I totally get your point. I want to bring in Megan and get her thoughts on this as well. Megan McPeak courtside with us from Capital One Arena. Megan, you've heard us kind of all go off about turnovers. You've heard us talk about the high-scoring clip of the big three for us tonight. What do you see that instead of what went wrong, we know that, what do you see besides turnovers that we can improve on for Friday that's going to put us back in the win column?
Something that Wes has said to me pregame throughout this entire season, but especially, I would say, in probably the last 6 to 8 games, your mindset. Christy talked about it. Chris talked about it. Drew talked about it. Your mental fortitude with when they punch back and they make that run, how do you respond? And I thought the mindset, it was there at times tonight, much like it was last night against Detroit. But then there was also stretches, long stretches, when it wasn't there. And going into last night's game, I asked Coach about gaining momentum, knowing that you've got just over 4 weeks left in the regular season. You're trying to, jockey for position between the playoffs and the play-in. Obviously, for him, he would rather be in the playoffs than the play-in situation. But a thing he mentioned was your mindset and how do you withstand what teams are going to do, because it's a game of runs. And last night, when you look at that Pistons game, there was stretches that they did it well. There were stretches tonight that they did it. The process was there, but then there's a run that obviously Atlanta makes, and it doesn't go over more than, a minute and a half to 2 minutes, but that run eliminates your 14-point lead. And all of a sudden now you're in a back and forth shooting expo with Trae Young and DeJounte Murray. But specifically Trae Young, who you go back to that game in Atlanta, he did not have an efficient night. And Bradley Beal said to me after that win in the walk-off, Trae Young is not going to have a bad shooting night like that again.
Nope.
He did not have a bad shooting night like that again against the same team that he had a bad shooting night.
Right.
He didn't have it again. He showed why he is known as Ice Trae. You cannot get into a three-point contest with him when your three-point shooting is not there, with the exception, as you mentioned, Wes, of Kristaps Porzingis. I think the mindset tonight, something that Coach Wes, as I mentioned, has said this the last 6 to 8 games. It was there, but it wasn't there for consistent enough stretches for 48 minutes.
Well, the one person I know who's been locked in mentally is Kyle Kuzma. We saw him come back in the game against Detroit, definitely dealing with that knee, and he bumped knees with somebody tonight, hit the floor a couple of times, taking some really heavy contact. But look at his box tonight, 25 points, 10 boards, 6 dimes. This man was on a triple-double hunt if he could have got it. If there had been 7 more minutes in this game, Kyle Kuzma probably would have gotten a triple-double tonight. Right. Christy, what do you see about him that lets you know he's got that consistent fire? Because Kyle wants it. This is a man who wanted to be an all-star, was denied it. He knows what it means to be in the postseason because he's got a championship. He wants to pursue greatness for this squad, Christy.
He knows how to win, and he plays with pride. And I think that's the piece that's missing from what we've been saying. Yes, it's attitudinal. Yes, it's the mental fortitude, but it's the pride to compete and win. Every single possession, Kyle Kuzma is going to put pressure on you, whether it's on the defensive end or on the offensive end. He's a 3-level scorer who puts you to sleep when he has the basketball in his hands. So when you have a player like Kyle Kuzma who shot 10 of 15 from the floor tonight and had double figures in rebounds, but also set his teammates up 6 times. Listen, he is dangerous in terms of what he presents for opponents, but there's got to be some extra carryover or some trickle down of that kind of leadership. And maybe it doesn't have to be vocal leadership from Kyle Kuzma. Maybe it's just, let me see how Kyle Kuzma is working tonight. And let's just follow that mold, and let's just follow that energy, because he has a championship ring. So he has the blueprint. He understands it up here.
Megan, you mentioned punching people in the mouth. I think of a boxing illustration where you see 2 heavyweight fighters knock each other out at the same time. We got them last time. They felt some kind of way and showed up here. They got us this time. We're feeling some kind of way. We'll see you again Friday. That's how this is going, and I love this time of the season. Make a no move because we got more coming up here on Postgame Live.